And if you do have any questions, of course, you can chime in the chat. So 1 second while I get my screen here together. Okay. Okay. Daughters deserve healed mothers. I'm super excited about this webinar. This is our first webinar for With Mother. So I'm so excited. And this is also, I guess, a learning curve for With Mother as well as we figure out those logistics on the back end. But thank you, ladies, for joining. Hopefully, as we go on, we'll get some more of our guests in the building. If they come on later at 10:30, that is so unfortunate, but I will make sure to reach out to everybody in regards to that confusion. So yes, daughters deserve healed mothers. This is a free webinar. I am Tori L. Edwards. I'm the project manager and the founder of With Mother. So a few housekeeping things. Of course, this is a safe space. You do not have to share anything personal if you do not want to. You're free to reflect, take notes, or just listen. All mics will be muted during the presentation to make sure everybody can hear what's being shared, but the chat will be open for questions. So I am excited about that. I am excited to hear from you all if you do have anything to share or to add as we conclude towards the end. And like it was shared in the description, there will be a gift that will be sent to you all through email. Hopefully everyone received their reminder email earlier today. If not, we can talk about what email that is coming from. So, what is With Mother? With Mother is a healing platform for mothers and daughters. We focus on healing generational wounds, reconnecting to our identity. Okay, tongue twister. We help women reconnect to their identity. We help women grow spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, okay, and rebuild emotional trust in mother-daughter dynamics. So if you like, you can scan the QR code here to learn more about the platform and what we're doing. We have been existing since 2023. It started off as a podcast. I started a podcast where I wanted to have these open and honest dialogues with my mother. And then from there, it pivoted into a growing community where now we're doing workshops. We are preparing for a mother-daughter fashion show in partnership with Dillard's Mall of Georgia. And I'm just excited about the growth. We're celebrating the mother-daughter bond, but we're also bringing awareness to sometimes it's not all, glitz and glamour. It's not all running through the tulips. So that's where the building emotional trust and helping destroy these generational patterns comes into play. So, daughters deserve healed mothers. This title of this webinar I felt was perfect to begin this webinar series as we close out 2025. It shook me a little because it holds the mother accountable, but it also acknowledges the daughter within the mother. So daughters deserve healed mothers. Again, I am Tori L. Edwards, and I am so excited to be here with you all. All right, so why does this webinar exist? Because unhealed mothers unintentionally wound their children. Because daughters are paying for pain they never asked for. And because healing is possible and necessary. And lastly, because the next generation deserves peace. So this webinar exists because it is time to bridge this gap. It is common to have dysfunction in the family, but is that really normal or have we made it normal? Have we made it normal because we never really learned how to process our emotions, how to communicate effectively, how to be honest about what's going on behind closed doors? So let's get into it. The three main reasons why mother-daughter relationships disconnect. Number one, emotional neglect or suppression. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier was With Mother was actually born out of me going through this process with my own mother. For years, there was like this deep resentment that I had for my mother because of things I experienced in my childhood. And that resentment grew to chaos forming in our relationship. And as I reached my adult years, I realized I wanted to take responsibility for my life and stop waiting for my mother to show up the way I wanted her to. And some of those disconnections came from emotional suppression. Okay, what does that look like? That looks like unspoken pain. In some households, you don't really talk about certain things. Okay, it's like we don't talk about that in this household. Emotional neglect or suppression can look like generational silence. All right, not being honest about what's happening. One of the other reasons why there's a big disconnect between mothers and daughters is because of the control versus the connection. And that's where I found myself as I entered my adulthood with my mother, realizing that there was more of a control there than there was a connection. And that was based out of her fear-based parenting style. Okay, a lot of our mothers, even our own experiences, it's like we don't want our children to have these experiences. It can't be. So we parent them out of fear. And unfortunately, that fear that we're parenting our children out of, that turns into anxiety for our children. And so when they go out into the world, they're filled with anxiety. Control versus connection. That looks like conditional love. I'll do this for you if you do this. I'll love you if you do this. Control versus connection looks like guilt or shame dynamics. And lastly, one of the main reasons why mother-daughter relationship disconnect is because of the unhealed trauma that's passed down. Now, a lot of times we like to think that when certain things happen to us, even if we're not parents yet, certain traumatic things may happen to us, whether that's abuse, abandonment, whatever the case may be. When we don't take the time to actually process these things and we just decide to turn away from it like it didn't happen, it can still show up in our children. And it's interesting because a few months back, I was talking to my mother and I was like, Mom, it's so funny how when I was 5 years old and you were in this relationship with this individual, how 20 years later, I ended up in the same type of relationship, but didn't even know, you had that same experience. And so it's kind of like, how does that happen? It makes you think, how can my experiences show up in my daughter, even or my son, but mainly my daughter? How can these experiences show up in my daughter if I haven't even told her about it? And a lot of these things are spiritual, okay? And it's time that we acknowledge it. It's time we acknowledge how certain experiences made us feel. So unhealed trauma passed down, that can look like abandonment, that can look like abuse, and it can look like identity loss, as well as unmet inner child needs. Now, these roots often begin before we're even born through our mother's unprocessed wounds. A lot of times we like to just cover things up with experiences, with material things, but that wound is still there. That deep rooted wound is still there. Now, the cost of unhealed maternal wounds. What does this look like? It can look like the lack of trust. And I actually want to share something with you ladies in regards to this slide. So it can look like the lack of trust. It can look like insecurity in womanhood. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to take responsibility for my life once I entered into my adulthood, because I realized if I wanted to change, it started with me. I could no longer blame what happened in my childhood on the reason why I was the way I was as an adult. The cost of unhealed maternal wounds can look like poor boundaries and even anxiety or emotional shutdown. Now, let's dig a little deeper into this. What happens when we don't heal? Repeated cycles in our parenting, difficulty setting boundaries, low self-worth or people-pleasing tendencies, guilt and shame within the mother or daughter, and even a spiritual disconnection. Now, right here, I also want to share something else with you ladies. I wanted to put these pictures up on this screen because I believe that the mother-daughter bond is the most special experience one can have. Whether your daughter is an adult, whether she's a newborn, whether she's a toddler, the emotional connection that the mother and the daughter experience is like no other. And the chains can be broken. They can be broken in your bloodline. It takes awareness, it takes accountability, and it also takes responsibility. So I want to share this passage with you all before we move on. So if you can see on this screen, towards the bottom, it says Psalms 107, 13 through 15. And that passage says, "Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness and broke away their chains." Now, these can be emotional chains, spiritual chains, physical chains. And it says, "Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind." Now, one of the biggest things that played a role in my healing journey was the faith side of things. Yes, I participated in the tools that were provided, whether that was therapy, coaching, workshops, journaling, meditation. But I also understood that on the spiritual side of things, I was lacking growth. And I wanted to grow in that area because I wanted peace. I was so tired of dysfunction. I was so tired of chaos. And so in that moment, I wanted to explore, what does that look like to grow in faith? Now, before we move forward, I want to give you all some time to just kind of pause and reflect on what was shared so far. I have a few questions that I'm going to put up that I would like for you to just kind of take a moment to think about. Whether it's the disconnection within yourself as a woman, because before we're a mother, before we're a wife, before we're all these other titles that come with being a woman, we are a woman first. So whether the disconnection is with yourself, whether the disconnection is with your daughter, or whether the disconnection is with your mother, I want you to take some time to pause and reflect on these questions on the screen. Now I'm going to read them, but I just want you to kind of sit for a second with yourself and think about, who taught you what love looks like? What part of you still needs mothering? And are you still trying to prove you're enough to your mom or your daughter? I really want you all to think about this, especially the first question. Who taught you what love looks like? I know in our modern time, we associate love with pain. Love is pain. But I disagree. I believe over time we have decided love was pain based off of what we thought love was. But love is patient. Love is kind. And love truly is the foundation to all of these relationship dynamics. The relationship with yourself. Are you patient with yourself? Are you kind to yourself? Okay. What does love look like for you? Who taught you that? When I decided a couple years back, this was pre-pandemic, I realized I need to mother myself. Yes, my mom is still living. At the time, though, the disconnection between my mother and I was so strong and so apparent that I had to take responsibility for mothering myself. And in that moment, I needed to mother myself emotionally. I needed to make time for my emotions, how I felt. During that moment, that looked like a lot of journaling. I never journaled so much in my life. And it might sound cliche, it might sound like that doesn't really work. But in my experience, everybody's not a safe space to open up to. And some of our biggest challenges, they're best that we process them with ourselves first before we look out of ourselves to process. And then there was a point where I was trying to figure out if I was enough and why I felt that way. Why was I dealing with being enough? Where was that coming from? Do I associate my value with performance? Am I only being appreciated when I do something good? Or is being me enough? And so I hope you had time to really think about this and really sit with yourself. This journey, this journey that we're on, that you ladies are on, it looks like sitting with yourself 80% of the time. Sitting with yourself to better understand yourself, better understand what's causing you so much burden. Now, let's talk about tools to rebuild emotionally safe relationships. So, start with inner child healing through journaling, therapy, or prayer. All of us has a little girl inside of us. No matter what age we are, we started off as a little girl. How was she treated? How was she spoken to? How did she feel during that time? And in the beginning of your life, in the beginning of your inner child life, what did that world look like? How did you feel? That's where you need to begin. You need to begin with her. We talked about journaling, obviously therapy. And there's something I want to share about therapy. Therapy isn't one size fits all. Sometimes you're going to have to meet a few different therapists before you click and mesh with that right one. Now, if therapy isn't a path you want to take, then you have coaching, private coaching, which is a little different. And then, of course, prayer. I believe in having a personal relationship with God. And I believe it's very important when it comes to growth. So, okay, validate your daughter or mother's emotions, even if you disagree. Tools to building a safe emotional relationship. Validate your daughter or your mother's emotions, even if you disagree. That's where a lot of the disconnection starts. Our daughter might say something, or our mother might say something, and we might get offended. And so, in order to show dominance, we get loud, we get aggressive, we get passive aggressive, we get quiet. But it's okay to have different point of views. It's okay to have different perspectives. Your mother, your daughter, she's an extension of you, but she's not you. And I think a lot of times it's hard for mothers to come to that conclusion. Yes, my daughter is an extension of me, but she's not me. She has her own ideas, her own ways of being. And I need to honor that. I need to make space for that, even if I don't agree. How to create emotionally safe relationships. Let's get more into it. Apologize when necessary and mean it. And I know that might be hard, but apologize. Sometimes many of us, we just need an apology and we want it to be sincere and genuine. We want to be heard. We want to be seen. And lastly, break the silence. Initiate a safe, non-confrontational conversation. Now, I know that might be challenging for women, me included, because we are more emotional. But it is possible for us to manage our emotions and work through confrontation. Okay? So start with breaking the silence. And for some of us, that's not a possibility. Maybe you're not able to have this non-confrontational conversation with your mother, with your daughter. Maybe all you have is a pen and a pad. Sometimes writing a letter and never giving it to your mother, but writing down everything you've ever wanted to say and just keeping it for yourself is what you need. So, what's next? So, on this last part, we're going to get into a few things. And then, if you ladies want, we can open up the floor for discussion. And then we can let you all go back to enjoying your evening. So, what's next? Webinars and workshops. So, I'm really excited about this being our first webinar for With Mother. Thank you all for coming and joining, number one, and thank you for letting me know about that glitch. This was a 25-seat webinar, and it was sold out. However, I do believe that the timing left some of us confused, but do not worry. I want this webinar to be a series for the remainder of the year, and I want us to get deeper into these conversations. But this one was to break the ice, acknowledging that daughters need healed mothers in order to thrive. And mothers are included in that. Our mothers are daughters, okay? So look forward to future webinars coming for us to come together and really just lock in and peel back the layers on this conversation, okay? Also, we'll have some in-person workshops. I'm not sure where you all are located. However, With Mother is based in the Metro Atlanta area. So if you are in the city, of course, as these workshops come available, feel free to come out. Another thing we're doing is a series on YouTube called Talks with Mom, where I'm having these honest, vulnerable conversations with my mother about our experiences. And we do offer private coaching for healing, whether that's a 90-day experience that you want to take on or something more sporadic where you want to talk here and there. And then we have our newsletter where we give out tips, resources, and updates. Now, I would love for you all to learn more about With Mother. You can find us online withmother.com. And on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We're getting around to TikTok. It's With Mother. So please stay connected. Now, healing is a process, but you do not have to do it alone. And the key thing I want to point out is process. Okay? Sometimes, and lately, now that healing is more on the trendy side of things, which I'm not mad about, a lot of us need some healing. Okay, that's why this project is here. I needed some healing. However, it has been a process for me. This has been a 7-year process. Not with Mother, but Tori L. Edwards has been on a 7-year process of cleansing, of isolation, of mourning and grieving. And so I don't want you to give up on your process. I'm not sure where you are and why you felt led to participate in this webinar, but whether the dynamic is with your daughter, your mother, or with yourself, understand that it's a process and it takes time. Just like anything else, you have to be intentional and you have to decide to put aside some time for yourself in the process that you're on to heal and to become whole. You don't have to stay in a place of healing. You can become whole, and you don't have to do it alone. And that's why I'm so excited about building this community. We're at the very beginning stages of what this looks like. And so thank you for being a part of the beginning.